The Gospel of Jesus Christ according to St. Mark. Mark chapter 16 verses 9 to 15. After rising from the dead early on the first day of the week, Jesus appeared first to Mary Magdalene, from whom he had cast out 7 demons. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. But when they heard that he was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Later, he appeared in a different form to 2 of them as they were walking on their way to the country. They returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe them either. Finally, he appeared to the 11 as they were at table. He reproached them for their unbelief and hardness of heart, because they had not believed those who saw him after he had risen. And he said to them, "Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to every creature. He is alive," a call from the light of the resurrection. There are days when we wake up, look up at the blue sky, and still feel gray inside. Mornings when sunlight softly enters the room like a tender comfort, and yet our hearts remain heavy. We don't quite know why we are sad, but we can't be joyful either. Those are the days when faith flickers like a small candle in the wind, trembling on the verge of going out. And if you are in such a moment, today's Gospel from St. Mark is the Lord's gentle whisper to you, a tender call. I am alive. I rose again, for you. When sadness clouds the light. After his resurrection on the first day of the week, Jesus appeared first to Mary Magdalene, a woman who had once been possessed by 7 demons, but who had been healed and became the first to see the risen Lord. What an immense honor! But she didn't keep it to herself. She went and told the others who had lived with Jesus, those now consumed by grief and tears. Yet they did not believe. That simple statement carries such sorrow. When they heard that he was alive and that she had seen him, they did not believe it. Have you ever shared something precious, a fragile joy, only to be met with rejection? Have you ever seen light, while those you loved chose to remain in the dark? That loneliness is real, and that's exactly what Mary Magdalene went through. Rejected by those who had once walked the same road. I remember hearing a friend share that after many years of living with depression, she had finally begun healing, starting to rediscover light again. When she returned home and shared this with her family, hoping they would rejoice with her, all she received was a dismissive comment, "You're probably just overthinking again." That disbelief hurt more than any wound. Yet Mary did not complain. The Gospel contains not a single word of bitterness. Perhaps because once you've seen the light, you no longer wish to argue in the dark. She knew, sooner or later, the light would shine through. The gentle steps of the risen light. After Mary, Jesus appeared to 2 of his disciples as they walked on the road to the countryside. A tender detail. On the road to the country, they were walking away from the city. Away from the event, perhaps even giving up. Jesus didn't call them back, didn't scold them, he simply walked beside them. In another form, meaning he didn't impose the same image they once knew, but instead met them in their weakness. He journeyed with them in silence, listening as they spoke of lost hopes and dying faith. And then, only when they opened their hearts, he let them recognize him. He is alive and walking with them. That story reminds us of the 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus. Luke chapter 24 verses 13 to 35. Also lost in disappointment, Jesus didn't shatter their sorrow with logic, he simply walked with them patiently. Just like in our lives, sometimes God doesn't speak, doesn't appear in brilliance, but he is walking with us, in the form of a friend, a song, a knowing glance. An old priest once told this story. When he was a young seminarian, he lost his faith after the sudden death of his mother. For months, he didn't pray, didn't celebrate Mass, but one day, as he sat in silence in the chapel, a little boy wandered in, sat beside him, and asked, "Do you know that Jesus feels sad when you're sad?" That simple question brought him to tears. In that moment, he realized God had been looking for him all along, in ways he never expected. When the heart shuts down, the good news had come twice, through Mary, then through the 2 disciples, but the apostles still did not believe. This time, Jesus did not appear in disguise. He showed himself directly to the 11, and he reproached them for their unbelief and hardness of heart. It may sound like a rebuke, but if we pay attention, we'll see, it wasn't anger, it was an awakening. Like a father speaking to a lost child. You're closing your heart. Open it. Jesus rebuked them to open the door, to bring them from darkness to light. And he didn't stop at reproach. He gave them a mission. Go into all the world and proclaim the good news to every creature. A sending forth, not a rigid command, but a deep trust. These men, who had failed, doubted, feared, were entrusted with a sacred mission. God always does that. He doesn't wait for us to be perfect before he sends us. He sends us so that we may grow in him. Like Moses, who had killed a man and fled, yet God chose him to lead Israel to freedom. Or like Jude Thaddeus, once a notorious prisoner, who, after conversion, became a missionary to hundreds of other inmates. Faith, a small seed in the night. Dear friend, today's gospel is an honest picture of faith. It begins with sorrow, darkness, and disbelief, but ends in the Lord's presence and a mission. That's the spiritual journey we're all on. You may be like Mary, seeing the light, while others don't believe. You may be like the 2 disciples, walking away from hope, then unexpectedly encountering Jesus. Or you may be like the 11, full of doubt, fear, and closed off. Wherever you are in that journey, Jesus is coming to meet you. The light never abandons the dark. One night in an orphanage in India, Mother Teresa was awakened by the cries of a little girl. She went to her, not with questions, but with a gentle embrace. She rocked her in her arms until the child stopped crying and drifted to sleep. A fellow nun asked, "Mother, aren't you afraid of being disturbed every night?" Mother smiled. "When she cries, it's Jesus calling me." Jesus still calls us each day, through cries, pain, and lonely moments. But he doesn't only call us to others, he also comes to us. In every weary breath, every quiet tear, he is coming, saying, "I have risen, do not be afraid, I am still here." Proclaim the gospel, with healed wounds. God doesn't choose the flawless to be his messengers. He chooses the ones who have fallen, doubted, wept, because they understand others' pain. They proclaim the gospel not just with words, but with their healed scars. Saint Francis of Assisi once prayed, "Lord, make me an instrument of your peace." You too can be such an instrument. not through lofty holiness, but through a heart once broken, now able to understand. Proclaiming the gospel isn't always about going far or preaching sermons. Sometimes, it's just staying beside someone who is sad, listening to one who is screaming in silence, placing your hand on someone's shoulder and saying, "I don't fully understand, but I'm here." Is this the end, or the beginning? Dear friend, the end of Mark's gospel is not a conclusion. It's a beginning of the church, of the mission, of every Christian life. Today, Jesus still appears, not only in churches, but in daily life, in a gentle gaze, in a helping hand, in an ordinary morning filled with hope. If you are doubting, hurting, or confused, please don't shut your heart. Jesus is alive. He is coming. He is inviting you to walk with Him. And at the end of that road is not worldly glory, but a warm fire, a loving gaze, and an eternal invitation. My beloved child, I am still here. I have risen, do not be afraid. That is the voice of Christ today, gentle as the morning light, tender as a loving heartbeat, and enduring as the Spirit's breath in your life. Will you believe? Will you walk? Will you let the light touch the darkness in your heart today? If you can, just whisper, "Lord, here I am." And then, let Him do the rest.